This video is for finding the quotient of power property. The essential question here is, how can you divide two powers that have the same base? So if we're looking at this, and we've got our repeated base, our base in this case of the first problem is 2. And it's saying that if we have 4 2's, that's what that means, 2, 3, 4, over 2 2's, what will we end up with? Now, if you remember your properties of having fractions, if you have the same number in the numerator as you do in the denominator, they cancel each other out. And again, this one would cancel each other out. So then you're left with just 2 2's up here in the numerator. And we know that 2 2's, 2 times 2, can be written as 2 to the power of 2, or 2 squared. And that can pretty much be done with every one of the other ones. For the next one, we have negative 4 5 times up here in the numerator. 5 times, I forgot one. And then you've got 2 down in the denominator. So again, we cross off. What's the same? Well, there's a negative 4, there's a negative 4. So we're left with 3 negative 4's up in the numerator. And if we were to write that as a power, remember their parentheses, you're going to have negative 4 to the 1, 2, 3. And again, with our next example, we've got 7 7's up in the top and 3 7's down in the bottom, in the denominator here. So again, cross out what's in the numerator, if the same thing's in the denominator, for each of those. And you're going to be left with 1, 2, 3, 4. So 7 to the 4th power. So since I don't have enough room, I'm going to skip the 8.5 and just move over here to this 10. I've got 10 8 times on the top and 10 5 times on the bottom. And again, we're just going to cross out the ones that are the same and figure out what we're left with. 10 to the 3rd. Now you may have noticed a pattern starting to form. If you're looking at the exponents, if you notice 4 minus 2 is going to give us 2. 5 minus 2 gives us 3. 7 minus 3 gives us 4. And 8 minus 5 gives us 3. So what we're looking at here is on our key idea. To divide powers that have the same base, all you need to do is subtract their exponents. It saves a lot of writing out, as you can see, especially when you start getting up into the 8, 9, 10, or even more of the exponents. So if you're looking at 4 over 5 divided by 4 to the 2nd power, you just take 5 minus 2, which gives you 3. So 4 to the 3rd power, keeping that base the same. So when we're looking at this, let's look at example 1, dividing powers with the same base. So like I said, 2 to the 6th divided by 2 to the 4th. First thing you're going to do is, by the quotient of powers property, subtract them. Simplify, and you get 2 squared. On part B here, again, keeping that parentheses around the negative 7, you're just going to subtract them according to the quotient of properties. I know these are kind of light over here on this side of the line, but that's basically when it's giving you the reason why you're able to do what you do. This is going to come very important when we start doing proofs in like geometry and things. But then your next step is just to simplify. Negative 7 to the 6th power, keeping those parentheses around. And then for part C, we've got h to the 7th, h to the 6th. Guess what? According to the quotient of powers property, all we've got to do is subtract them, which is going to give us h to the 1st, or just h. Let's look at example 2. Now, this is when we're going to be simplifying an expression. If you notice, we've got multiplying on the top and then dividing. So let's figure out how can we simplify this, keeping our answer as a power. First step is the numerator is a product of powers. That's what we learned about in the last lesson. So you just need to add the exponents in the numerator. So we've got 3 to the 4th and 3 squared, so 4 plus 2. And simplify that, we get 3 to the 6th divided by 3 to the 3rd. And then, according to the quotient of powers property, we subtract the numerator by the denominator, keeping the base the same. Remember, you've always got to subtract the numerator from the denominator. So we end up with 3 to the 3rd when we simplify. 6 minus 3 is 3. So looking at example 3, now instead of numbers, we've got some letters thrown in here. We've got a to the 10th times a to the 7th. Well, a to the 10th divided by a to the 6th times a to the 7th divided by a to the 4th. Now we've got two different ones that we've got to multiply and then figure out what it's going to simplify down to. So the first thing that we need to look at is remembering that what we did here is a quotient of powers property is we just divided each of those. So a times 10 minus 6, according to the quotient property, times a times 7 minus 4. So those will simplify down to a to the 4th times a to the 3rd. And then, if you remember from the last lesson, when we talked about the product of powers property, we're just multiplying, so all you have to do is add the exponents. A to the 4th plus 3. 4 plus 3 is going to give us 7. So simplified, it's just a to the 7th. I know it sounds like a lot of steps, but it's just all the steps that you know how to do. It's just remembering what you've got to do and when. Now, how are we going to use this in real life? Here's a real-life application. We're looking at the projected population of Tennessee in the year 2030. It's supposed to be 5 times 5.9 to the 8th power. Predict the average number of people per square mile in 2030. So if we're looking at our map here of our Tennessee, the land area is about 5.9 to the 6th power miles squared. So we're going to use a model to solve the problem. So we're going to say that the people per square mile is going to equal the population in 2030 divided by the land area. Well, now we just got to plug in those numbers. The population in 2030 was 5 times 5.9 to the 8th, and the land area is 5.9 to the 6th. I know it's kind of a light blue color, and it's not showing up real well. Hopefully you can still read that. But all we did here is we substituted. That's the reasoning. That's over here, the substitute. Why we did what we did. Now we're looking at 5 times 5.9 to the 8th divided by 5.9 to the 6th. All we did was rewrite it. When we're multiplying, it doesn't matter whether it's in the numerator or next to the fraction. So we just moved it out so that we could simplify what we can see. Because we know what to do with 5.9 to the 8th divided by 5.9 to the 6th. We're just looking at the quotient of powers property, where we just simply subtract 8 minus 6, which is going to give us 5.9 squared. If we use our calculator and multiply that out, you're going to end up with 174.05. Now see, the reason you need to know how to do this is some of these numbers were probably too big for you to put in your calculator. So by simplifying beforehand, now you can fit them on the calculator. So what that's telling us is that there will be about 174 people per square mile in Tennessee in the year 2030. So please go to Clever and work on your assignment for this lesson. Don't forget to show me your notes though.